The Fantasy Fullback Dive is thrilled to welcome on for the first time now Howard Bender at Roto Guy on Twitter. He's the VP of Operations over at Fantasy Alarm and the host of Fantasy Alarm Show on the Sirius Fantasy every Monday through Friday, 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern Time, which also won the 2017 Fantasy Sports and Gaming Association's Award for Show of the Year. So my man, Howard, is a true wolf. Thanks so much for joining. How are you doing, my man?
I'm doing real well, man. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on, man. It's an absolute pleasure. We finally meet. We can continue to be connected by one of our Twitter followers, so it's good to finally, get the face-to-face here.
I love him, man. He's probably listening right now. Scotty Brooks, you brought this one together, my man. You always shout us out, likely because we both just love, me and Howard, we love interacting with the fans, and Scott's an awesome guy. He brought us together, and I'm thrilled to do this now, man. So Scott, if you're listening, shout out to you, man. Thanks for helping make this happen. And today our featured topic, what we're brought together for, is sleepers. It's a word that often gets tossed around the fantasy community. Guys that are essentially just underpriced or overlooked based on the actual fantasy upside that they have. And it's crucial to have that kind of list, especially for the later rounds of drafts. So we're previewing them now, getting that list together early here. And make sure you check out Howard's full list of sleepers. We're not going to give them all to you here, but the Fantasy Alarm Draft Guide, 50% off right now, an awesome deal. I bought my copy already to preview his content, and it's fantastic so far, and so much more is on the way. I think it's an absolute steal. Is there anything you want to promote about your guide, Howard? I absolutely love it so far.
Well, it's kind of funny. We're talking about that Sleepers article, which was written probably, right before the release, which was early June. It's a living draft guide, so there's content rolling out steadily. And I already have, more favorites and different favorites and, going through as many best ball drafts as I'm doing right now. The list is ever changing, and that's the beauty of the living draft guide, is that the content will always be fresh and updated. And if I pick somebody else who I think is quote unquote sleeper, but somebody who probably isn't getting the love that they should be getting, I'll be adding them to the list.
Absolutely. And that's the best part. As you said, living guide. It's the day and age we live in. I mean, I used to love bringing a magazine to the beach and everything, but those are going to be so outdated by the time you're actually drafting. So I totally agree. That's the way to look, is those living, breathing guides. So fully with you. Actually, just before we hopped on, you were completing a best ball draft, right?
Yeah, it was unbelievable too.
How did it turn out? Let's hear it.
I don't know how they let me draft this team. It's kind of shocking. Wait, I'll pull up the draft board. I took a snapshot of it and I threw it down on Twitter because I was like, really? How did I end up with this? So I picked from the 6 hole, and I got to be honest with you, I wasn't thrilled with the 6 spot, but I mean, it is a 10-teamer, so you always have to take that with a certain grain of salt. But I mean, Dalvin Cook falls to me at 6.
Beauty.
Nick Chubb, George Kittle. Ooh. Then I took OBJ and Mike Evans. Then I took
Evans
DK
round
Metcalf.
5? What? Wait, and Metcalf? So you had those running backs and Kittle, and then those receivers. What the?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, right?
Keep going. You're just already getting me excited.
Are they throwing this to me? Ronald Jones, J.K. Dobbins. Dobbins in the 8th. I'm like, really? If he's just sitting here, I'm like the Ravens now. I'm like, well, if he's just sitting here, I might as well do that.
Exactly.
Hunter Henry, who we'll talk later in the show. I'm a fan.
Yes,
I'm a big fan.
Absolutely.
Marvin Jones, Josh Allen, A.J. Dillon, Baker Mayfield, Brashad Perriman, N'Keal Harry, CeeDee Lamb.
After all those other guys, I would have put him like 4 rounds before.
Like CeeDee Lamb in the 16th round.
Good Lord! Oh man, stealing right there. Absolute stealing. Great team. Absolutely love it.
Ridiculous. Then defenses and kickers for the final 4 picks. I'm just like, oh, okay, guys, thank you.
Beautiful. Great start to the best ball season right there, man. That's a fantastic team. Absolutely. So already you got a preview of what Howard can do. That's just a dominant lineup. I don't know who else was going when, but that was insane. So that's fantastic. So before we dig into some of those sleepers, and you probably already gave a few names away based on that draft there, but before we get into those, I always like to just kind of pick the wolves as we get them on here, their brain, to kind of learn their tendencies, their tools, their tips for just an overall kind of philosophical, strategical outlook. So before we get into all that too, What's kind of been your path? I know you've been doing this for a while now. How'd you get into the industry? When did you get involved? And do you have any advice for people also looking to get involved like myself?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's a grind. It's so different. The business is so different from when I really first started. I mean, from when I first started, I mean, I guess it was in the late '90s where I was, the internet was blowing everything up, and I was reading all these articles, and I was like, man, at some point, I feel like I could do this. Like, I mean, it's that standard mentality. It's like when the DFS boom happened, and anybody who made $10 playing DFS, they were like, I'm an analyst. I should be writing right now. I should be doing this. So, I kind of took my shot. I started a blog on my own, and at that point back then, there were no there wasn't podcasts or. I mean, even Sirius Fantasy Sports Radio wasn't around. So it was all written in the magazines, the websites. So I started a blog. I just kept writing, and I wrote every single day. I mean, that was it. And I didn't know if 10 people were reading it or 2 people were reading it. I was just like, I'm just going to keep doing this so I can kind of get in the flow. And then I started, I guess it was like right after, I don't even remember. It was probably like early 2000s when I started sending in my my links to other managing editors and try to get involved that way. Just show them what I wanted to show them the most, and one of the reasons why I wrote every single day without giving a crap is Google ads or anybody paying me, was because I really wanted people to see the fact that I was dedicated.
Yeah,
like that's what bosses are looking for. They're looking for dedication. People who are going to, get the work. It's not just about great content, but it's being responsible. It's getting your work in on time. It's hitting deadlines when you need to hit them. And I thought that by making sure that I just kept at it every single day. And there were some days where I wrote like 3 sentences. There were, there were some days where I I wrote 30 pages. So, I mean, it just kind of went that way, and sent my stuff, and the next thing I know, I got hired by the original Fanball. This is like the second incantation of Fanball we're dealing with now. I got hired by them, and then from there it went to Fangraphs, and then Roto picked me up, and it just kind of boomed from there. I mean, it really, I was doing guest spots on, the channel Sirius Fantasy Sports Radio, just doing their 10-year anniversary. I've been on the channel for like 6.5, almost 7 years. But, for the first couple of years, it was strictly as like every Wednesday morning, RotoWire. I was covering for them. I was covering the Royals. I was covering the 49ers. I picked up a couple other teams along the way, just as their local beat writer, so to speak. So, and I did that. I mean, for people who are just starting off today, I mean, it's really, listen, I get the whole, nobody wants an unpaid internship, and if somebody's making money off of your work, you should be getting compensated. I agree with that. But what I think a lot of people fail to realize is that this market is so super saturated right now. Everybody's got a podcast. Everybody wants to be on the radio. Everybody wants to be writing. Everybody, like all of that stuff. And we get it, but I mean, we can only hire so much. There's only so much money that can just go straight up to just content. And I feel bad about that in a sense because, obviously I think that a lot of guys, and this is what I love about the Fantasy Alarm team, it's grinders. It's grinders who understand, who are looking at the long run. They see what we're building at Fantasy Alarm, and they're showing the dedication to make that happen. And as that's happening, they're paying them more and more with that. I mean, so it's more than just, competitive. But if you're just starting out, you have to understand that, companies just aren't going to just pick you up for that. You have to, find – it's almost like going to the minor leagues. You have to find sites like Friends with Fantasy Benefits that Justin Mason runs, where it's revenue sharing. He says you'll get paid, based on – the traffic for your work. So you have to promote your own work. You have to do, and that's, and I end up, if I need somebody, if I'm like, oh, dude, I need a hockey writer. Justin, you got anybody who writes hockey? He's like, oh, yeah, absolutely. Take this guy. Yeah. And we work it that way. So that way they do start getting paid and start getting their name out. So, I mean, just show whoever it is that you're dedicated, that you're willing to really put in the time and necessary. I mean, it's, it's sports, so it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You really have to deal like that. You have to expect that. You got to suck it up and work the weekends. You got to suck it up and,
Yeah.
miss certain things. If, it's like, oh, what? I've got an opportunity to be on the radio on Sunday. Hell yeah. Nope. Sorry, hon. I can't go to the movies. Can't do this. Not going to your baby cousin's sister's house so that we can, sit there and hang out and watch the game. I have work to do now. And
Yeah.
you have to be able to make those personal sacrifices if you want this to be your full-time gig.
Absolutely. I mean, so many invaluable nuggets of information there. One, just staying consistent. Any writer, whether it's fantasy, whether it's any sports, whether it's just writing a screenplay, they all say if you can carve out some time that you just dedicate every single day, it's crucial. You got to work out the kinks. Some days it's going to be, like you said, 30 pages, and someday you might just get 3 sentences, but staying committed to, whatever time it is a day to get it out. I love that. And also just being willing to grind and prove your worth. Like, it's such a saturated market, so I totally see it all. Invaluable tips for anybody out there trying to get started. So thank you, Howard, for sharing your insight there. What about in terms of your process? Like, every single season, do you have any type of routines or traditions or best practices that you kind of follow where you begin a new season every year?
Well, considering football season is, because we've already drafted baseball. There's no hope for that nightmare. But, I mean, if you're talking about football, I mean, study the coaching movement first and foremost. Like, that's what I do immediately. If a team's changing a head coach or coordinator, you need to identify what system they're going to be implementing and then which players who are on that team excel and don't excel in that system. And then I go to like the player movement, the free agency. Yeah. And again, I identify what their performance is like in that system, in that place. It's like not everybody's Tom Brady who's got that clout where the head coach will be like, well, let me just adjust everything to, kind of do that. Guys go to another team. The coach is like, listen, this is the system we have. It's that situation with Cam Newton right now. I'm arguing with Jim Bowden back and forth. I'm like, Belichick is not going to change his system to be more suitable for Cam Newton. I'm like, Jacoby Brissett was a mobile guy who picked up that Patriots offense, and when Brady was out, Brissett was he was there. I mean, if Matt Castle can do it, come on. I mean, it's insane. So I'm like, there's no way that's going to happen. So free agent movement and what system they're going into. I mean, that's my starting point for the process.
Absolutely, yeah. It's such a wave, right? Yeah, you go coaching, then you go free agency, then the draft comes, and then it's finally training camp, and we can kind of start to see these values play out. That will be interesting. Cam Newton, by the way, it will be interesting to see like how he molds, because when Brissett took over, it did become a little bit of a more run-heavy, like option style. Are they going to mold to him, or is Belichick going to try to force him into that system? Interesting. How do you think that will all play out there? Is he going to be the starter? I know it's not on the script here, but do you think Cam Newton works out there in New England?
I don't know. See, here's the thing. Like, I mean, Belichick will make certain adjustments, but he's not going to overhaul this system. Like, that's the thing. Like, people are expecting, James White to, pop off, and N'Keal Harry is suddenly, showing up on everybody's radar. I'm like, I'm not 100% sure about this. I really not, because, one of the reasons that Cam didn't get signed was because nobody's had a chance to really, come, let him, look at the medicals, look at the physical, and have him come in and do that because of obviously COVID. So it's been really tough for him. I mean, he signed for pennies. He signed for half a million is guaranteed. That's it. It can go up to $7.5 million with incentives. So I think that it's a nice safety move for the Patriots if Jarrett Stidham really doesn't have what Belichick wants in a QB. He's easily going to go to Cam, or he can go to Cam. Consider it like an open competition, I think. But, I mean, it was very low risk for the Patriots to sign Cam Newton. So I think it works. I really do. Yeah. If Cam is healthy, I think it works. If Cam is healthy and starts all 16 games, I like Julian Edelman. I like James White. It'll be interesting to see how the rest of it, Mohamed Sanu, all of a sudden he starts popping up on radar maybe. But, listen, I'm not like flipped out about it. I still took the Bills at plus 140 to win the division.
Interesting, all that stuff. We shall see. I'm a diehard Pats fan, so we'll see how that
no,
all.
are
I know,
you?
I know.
I
Don't
never
hang up
would've
on me.
agreed.
Don't hang up on me.
I never would have agreed to this show had I known that. Come on.
I know. Oh, well, at least it's some intrigue here, whereas it was just looking like a let's see what we have in Stidham. We'll see what Cam brings. He's certainly hungry. He's posting all the hype videos.
What do you think of that situation? Like, I mean, do you think Cam starts?
I think he does, as long as he's healthy. As you know, we have to wait and see as long as he tests out. But I mean, we had Ryan Hannibal from WI Boston Sports Radio, and he was saying 1-year deal almost is the ideal situation because they can run the tires off him. It's almost like a running back in that sense, where you got like Gurley in a contract year and you don't worry about overworking him. Like, if they want to run him all the time, who cares? He's not going to be back next year most likely. So I'm very intrigued to see what they do with him. I do think there might be a little bit of molding to him, and if he's fired up, he's a hard worker, he's a grinder in that sense, then a motivated Cam, a motivated Belichick, there's certainly a little more hope here. Like, before it was the Bills, it's over, there's no way we're beating this team this year. Now they have Diggs and Allen takes the next step, but now I think there's some shot. I don't know. We'll see. I'm excited about it from the New England perspective.
If he does do well and another team signs him, then you get that draft pick back that you just lost for illegally filming.
Exactly. They're always playing one move ahead, my man. Exactly.
Right? Is Belichick not the craziest evil genius son of a bitch in the world? I mean, it's like, that popped into his head while he was doing it. He's like, screw it, man. If he's going to sign for, guaranteed only $500,000 for an incentive-laden deal, well, let's do it. I mean, I think that's what I was like, which was the chicken or the egg? Was it sign Cam, then you lost your pick, or was it lost your pick being like, let's sign Cam?
Right, exactly. Always thinking 10 steps ahead. That's what makes him the GOAT coach. I'm excited. I'm very excited here. In terms of when you rank players, you create their value. There's so many different factors that go into it. And I love that you already cited coaching is one of those. Obviously, the player's talent is one of those. Usage, their surroundings, the team around them. If you were kind of like weighing it all out, like, where do you kind of put the most stock into creating a fantasy formula in a way?
Oh, okay. So for me, it's system and scheme first, opportunity second, and then talent. I mean, it's crazy. You hear all these guys who talk about, oh, this dude was a beast in college. This dude was amazing, during school. And then they come to the NFL and the game moves a million times quicker than it does in college. You're not sitting there with the best players in the conference on your team. It's like when you see college coaches fail at the NFL level, it's like, oh, well, now you don't get to recruit the best kids in school, in the country here, right? So it changes things up. And so I think that, yes, there are guys who have tremendous talent, but it always takes them a little longer. The younger they are, it takes them a little longer to just kind of get used to what's going on in the NFL. So, I mean, listen, if there's a generational talent that's like, mind-blowing, where you knew Ezekiel Elliott was going to be a superstar in the NFL no matter what, then that's one thing. But, for me, again, it's I look at the coaching system, who the coaches are, what they're implementing, do they have the right personnel for that, and then who is that personnel? So that's usually how I deal with it.
Absolutely. Scheme dictates usage, dictates how that talent's used. I'm with you. I mean, if the players, no matter how good they are, if they're not in the field, what does it matter? So absolutely there. I don't know if how much you pay attention to the noise on Twitter, but there seems to always be this type of like advanced analytics versus film type of debate. Do you kind of, in terms of your preparation, do you pay more attention to stats? Do you kind of pay more attention to the tape? Do you mix them? How do you kind of view all that? It's kind of funny because, for me, like year-to-year numbers are tough to really use to analyze a player. Like, I mean, I'll use things like air yard, ago.The. I'll look at yak, yards after the catch, all that stuff there.
That's the kind of stuff that looks like it will carry over from year to year. Average depth of target for a wide receiver on the team he's playing. It's tough to find, a huge sample size at times. But I mean, I do look at at those numbers. For me, it's all about watching games.
Yeah.
It's all about watching. There's a strategy article in the draft guide that just says, watch every game, or just watch, as opposed to box score surfing. Because when you look at box scores, it doesn't really tell the full story of what's going on. So if you're watching all the games, then boom, then you see what happens. How many tackles did this guy legit break? Or, oh my God, everybody's talking about how fast this dude is carrying the ball. Well, of course he's fast. There's nobody else around him. He's not, eluding tackles or anything like that. So, you have to watch and see what's going on. So, some stats that go from like year to year, if the player stays with the same team, it's the same coaching system, it makes it just easier for you on that front. But for me, it's more about watching the games than it is like looking at data.
Yeah, I'm the same boat. The reason I'm doing this is because I love to watch football. So if there's stats that illuminate what I'm seeing, great. I love to mold them and marry them, but it first has to pass the eyeball test for a guy to be on my radar, for me to want to draft him. What about, any tools? Is there, obviously, within your own Fantasy Alarm draft guide, anything you'd like to, pump that is a great tool? And again, everything I've checked out so far seems awesome, both with that and then any other kind of sites. Is there anything that you go to as like a game changer you regularly utilize?
I don't really necessarily know if there are things that are game changers. I do look at a lot of consistency reports. We have consistency reports over at Fantasy Alarm because, listen, you can draft for upside all you want, but, sometimes you need some of those, 10 to 13 point grinders who you're going to get that from them week in, week out. It's like you look at Tyreek Hill's numbers last year. I mean, look at how many times, he like caught multiple touchdowns or had a really huge game and then put up like a couple of around it. So, if you're getting those guys, if you're getting a guy like Tyreek Hill who can be absolutely explosive, then you need to have behind him, as your depth, you need some of that consistency. So consistency reports, definitely something I look at. And then, mostly for like tools itself, because, in like setting up a seasonal fantasy football lineup, I'm studying the matchups. I'm looking at what's going on. All the tools that we have over at Fantasy Alarm, like in season wise, I use for DFS, points allowed versus position. I could sit here and tout our lineup generator, which is just, the new incantation is stupid how good it is. I was like blown away by it. And I'm not, I don't use lineup generators. I've just never been the guy who does that. And now all of a sudden, my tech team's like, come on, take a look at this. You gotta love this. So I'm like, all right, fine, whatever. I'll take a look at it. But it's consistency report. I look at things like snap counts. I think that's important, but it depends on what the stat is. What's the pass blocking percentage, like something like that. I'll look at in the realm of, okay, so which tight end, it's 2 tight end system here. Which guy's seeing the most snaps? All right, is he seeing the most snaps because he's the pass catcher, or does he have a really good pass blocking percentage? And that's that's the Higbee Gerald Everett debate that's going on right now, right? Where it's like if you guys look, actually Higbee's a little bit better of a blocker than Gerald Everett, and that could be Gerald Everett's a little bit faster and he's less clunky than Higbee. So that's something like that. So those are the tools. It's a variety of stuff just over at Fantasy Alarm. But again, it's what you're catching while watching.
Absolutely. And last question before we dig into our sleepers, our feature segment here is, are there any other analysts that, whether they're under the radar or some established big names, that you just kind of consider wolves that you like to follow and you respect and listen to their advice at times?
I look at it. It's kind of funny. I'll definitely promote the Fantasy Alarm team. Adam Ronis is one of the best fantasy players in the industry, and when he joined Fantasy Alarm, it was, to me, it was a huge coup for us. But, him and Jen Piacenti, John Impemba, Andrew Cooper, who's actually an up and comer. He's definitely worth a follow. He's that dude analyzes stuff. He's doing stuff for the Scott Fish Bowl, analyzing tight ends, and I mean that's something really good. I'm a huge fan of Jeff Manns. He and I used to work together. He was at Fantasy Alarm. He's actually the guy who brought me to Fantasy Alarm, and now he's over at Fantasy Guru now. He's a guy who I was much more of known for baseball than for football. And I guess when I met Jeff the first time, we actually sat down talking about analyzing and breaking down football because I never played the game as a kid. I was, my mom wouldn't sign that permission slip. So he actually played the game and loved to break it down. So, he showed me a variety of ways to break down football data. And, so, I mean, he and I, it's kind of funny now. We're, quote unquote rivals, but, we're friends, which is, something that a lot of people just don't really understand that, just because he went to a different site doesn't mean we don't like each other.
Yeah.
But, he's a guy whose opinion I definitely respect. I definitely, I listen to him on the Sirius XM channel as well. We talk on a regular basis. So, we're very like-minded there. If you're looking for more unheralded, Justin Mason, like I said, he's a great dude. The folks over at Fighting Chance Fantasy, really good group of guys. Gary Haddo, who actually won the Scott Fish Bowl last year. He's over there. And then there's a group of guys it's called the Undroppables. There's just a variety of guys who are there. Who just, a couple of guys break down data amazingly. Fantasy FB Stoner on Twitter. He's out here in California with me. So, we share multiple loves.
Yeah,
So.
yes, of course. Hey, us in Mass don't hate that stuff either, my man.
I know,
Recently
I know.
legalized. Love it.
It's coming one day. As soon as the government can figure out how to get their finger into that pie, they're all over it in the state.
It's a big pie. They're being idiots with it. But yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for some great recommendations for our listeners to make sure you check all those names out. Let's dig into the sleepers, the guys that are underpriced, the guys going too late, that is not represented the upside they have in the price that they are going for. We'll give you one each per position because we don't want to give away everything because, again, you got to make sure you check out the draft guide over at Fantasy Alarm on 50% off sale right now. So be sure to run over there, check that out. But Howard is going to be nice enough to share at least one with you per position, and I'll give you a person that I love as well. So let's start with quarterbacks right at the top here. You have one of your guys listed as Daniel Jones. I think it's a fantastic pick. What is your case for Daniel Jones as a nice sleeper for 2020?
A lot of people sit there. You can crap on Jason Garrett all you want, but that offense in Dallas. I mean, that was strong offense. I mean, it was defense was always their issue. The injuries on defense, they were just a sieve, and they couldn't get it together. So Jason Garrett coming over now, working with, going from working with Dak Prescott and the team before that, why am I playing
Tony Romo?
Romo?
Tony Romo.
So he's got that experience to work with a quarterback. Daniel Jones's biggest problem last year was obviously the turnovers. I mean, if we could just, Friday Night Lights him and just duct tape a football to his hands and make sure that he doesn't do that, then I think, listen, it might be a little bit of a vanilla offense, but he's got great targets in Tate Shepard, Darius Slayton. He's got Evan Engram. He's got Saquon Barkley. And let's face it, if you love most of those guys, and based on ADP numbers, a lot of people do, well, who's getting them the ball? It's got to be Daniel Jones, not to mention the fact the defense is terrible. So they're going to be in pass mode, catch-up mode on a regular basis, and he's definitely going to air it out a fair amount. So, I like it, and he's dropping in drafts left and right.
100%. I think it's a fantastic pick. Speaking of Garrett, the last time he was calling plays over there in Dallas. I mean, Romo, who knows if Daniel Jones will end up being as good of a talent as him, but he never finished outside the top 10 QBs as a fantasy under Jason Garrett, QB2, QB6 twice in a row, 10, 8, 8. So, I mean, this guy always put up 20 or more fantasy points per game, or 19 was the only time he wasn't. So he was always thriving. Plus, Danny Jones, last year we saw the ceiling. I mean, only Lamar Jackson had more 30-point games than Daniel Jones last year, and this guy's going as quarterback 15, 16 falling. I mean, we know the ceiling's there. If it can steady out, as you mentioned, with some turnover reduction and his value balances out, at his price, he could be an absolute steal. So I'm with you there. I love the Daniel Jones pick. One guy that I also want to add as a quarterback sleeper, Ryan Tannehill. I mean, this guy was the quarterback 2 in fantasy games that in terms of points for the games that he started the full time. He averaged 27.2. Only Lamar Jackson had more than him. He was on pace for 41 total TDs, including 6 rushing, 41.57 yards on the air. I mean, this guy was killing it. There's obviously the arguments, oh, well, they're due for regression. They scored on over 75% of their plays in the red zone. That's not going to happen. I get that. But they also only threw the ball 450 times. I mean, that's clearly could also regress too, and to the positive sense, and have more pass attempts. So yeah, maybe the scoring gets cut back, the rate of scoring, but if those pass attempts come up a little bit too, for a guy that thrived last year, once he finally got the starting gig. It's ugly after all those Dolphin years, but I think that might have been more of a product of Gase. Do you think do you think Ryan Tannehill? What do you think of him? Do you have any upside with Tannehill?
Last year, I was championing Ryan Tannehill for MVP. I mean, I was like, everybody's like, Lamar Jackson. I'm like, look at what's gone on in Tennessee. Look at the games they've won since they made that move to Tannehill. So I like him. I am a fan. Having that kind of a ground game and having a bulldog like Derrick Henry, it just takes so much pressure off the quarterback. Down in Miami, I mean, you want to talk about how many coaching changes did Tannehill go through? This dude literally had to learn, I think it was like 5 straight years he had to learn a brand new offense. So, I mean, how do you get any kind of consistency in that realm? He comes to Tennessee. He's sitting as the backup. It was a scheme that was it was very run centric, which took the pressure off of him. I mean, I wish that they gave him more targets. Like, AJ Brown, I love him. Jonnu Smith, I'm definitely in if you're looking for a late round tight end.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, Corey Davis, here's one of those guys. Oh, he's so great in college. Oh my God, he's gonna be a monster in the NFL. No, he's atrocious in the NFL right now. So, I mean, I wish they gave him another target there to throw to.
True.
Who knows? Maybe Humphreys or I don't even know. I don't even know who's on that depth chart anymore.
There's like nobody. You're right.
Deep down. But yeah, dude, I'll happily grab Tannehill as a QB2 in a league where I need the backup or in best ball. No doubt.
Absolutely. And that's kind of the strategy I always end up finding myself taking, is loading up on, Daniel Jones, Ryan Tannehill pairing. You sign me up all day. I'll take them rounds 12, 13, punt, that quarterback position, especially only if it's, a 1 QB. Obviously, super flex, things like that will change your strategy, but ultimately, there's just so much depth at the position. Load up on those running backs, receivers early on. Because there's just, those are 2 of, I love Teddy Bridge. I love Drew Lock, Joe Burrow, Gardner Minshew, all guys going so late that you can absolutely feast upon as a sleeper in your draft. What about running back? I have you had Jordan Howard in your list, which I think is another great call. What do you like about this guy moving over to Miami this year?
So, poor Jordan Howard, right? This dude, he's 25 years old. Like, people think that this dude is like, pushing 30. He's 25 years old. It didn't work out for him anymore in Chicago. Why? Because Matt Nagy wants a pass-catching, versatile running back. He comes from the Andy Reid coaching tree. He wants to rotate in his backs. He wants guys to do a lot of pass catching. Everything that we see in the Chiefs offense, Nagy, who worked in that Chiefs offense, wanted to implement that. So, Howard's got, like big frying pans for hands. I mean, he's just not a pass catcher, and, totally miscast there. Then he goes to to the Eagles, where Doug Peterson is from that same coaching tree. That does the exact same thing with his running back. So Jordan Howard, once again, miscast there. Now he goes to Miami. Now it's Brian Flores. Now it's, it's that Erhardt Perkins system that, that was run in New England for all those years. And Flores wants to pound the ball between the tackles. He needs a strong ground game presence, especially once Tua comes in to replace Ryan Fitzpatrick. You want to have that ground game established. You want to make sure that play action is actually, like, people bite on play action, because you do that. Now they brought in Breida, fine, you're going to have those pass catching moments there, but I mean, I really think that Miami and Flores just really wants to just grind it between the tackles. So I see Jordan Howard as being a guy that everybody is overlooking, and he ends up being, he like falls into like in the 6th round, unless everybody's going banana cakes for running backs, which a lot of drafts are. But, I mean, he's fallen to the 5th, 6th round, so you already have, like, 2 running backs and 2 wide receivers in your first 4 picks, and you're balling already. So now Jordan Howard becomes your flex play. He could end up being better than your RB1 or 2.
Absolutely, and they improved the defense as well. They improved the line. I mean, if they had made no line movements, I probably would have want no interest in anyone behind there, but they really made it a focus, not a guarantee to translate, but everything they've built there suggests we want to grind out these wins, as you said, so I'm all about it. Even Chan Gailey, their new offensive coordinator, tons of fantastic running back seasons under him. Fred Jackson was on pace for almost 2,200 total yards and 10 TDs. And before he got hurt one year, C.J. Spiller was a thing. Chris Ivory led the AFC in rushing in Chan Gailey's system. I mean, even Matt Forte at age like 32 had a great season under him. So, I mean, there's a history with the coordinator. There's an offense that seems just built to grind it out and let the defense that should be improved do its thing. So I love it. At the price tag, I'm fully with you. All the reports suggesting he's going to clearly be the goal line back, and why wouldn't he? He's an absolute bull, an absolute tackle breaker. So I love the call. I think Jordan Howard is a fantastic sleeper, and that doesn't mean you can't take Breida either. Take them both, and if Breida takes over the role, then so be it, because they're both going so cheap. Why not invest in the backfield that could really take off? A running back I like that's going really, really, like, we're talking about deep sleepers now, is Antonio Gibson, a really intriguing talent here. I mean, 229, 4.39 speed. Clearly one of the most athletic RBs in the league, just right off the bat because of that profile. So, and as you said, doesn't guarantee he's going to succeed because he was a great college athlete. Hell, he didn't even have that many touches in college, but the team drafts him, and it's a little bit congested of a situation. You got Darius Geis, who I do like, but can just never stay on the field. Adrian Peterson's, 70 years old at this point. And then, there's really no one else to compete with. And the thing I really love is their new coordinator, Scott Turner, based on that Norv Turner system, his dad, where they just pepper running backs. Obviously, we've seen Christian McCaffrey. He's a transcendental talent. Like, he's going to get peppered no matter what. But this goes back to Lamont Jordan and Chris Ogbanaya in Cleveland. I mean, this guy has always peppered his running backs. So if Gibson does become, and as a college receiver, it seems like a natural transition here to be that kind of joker, move around guy that he could just pepper out of the backfield, move into the slot, go all over the place. This guy is a freak athlete on a team that likes to pepper the running back, on a team that should improve in year 2 under Dwayne Haskins and certainly run more plays. I mean, 55 plays per game last year was like the 4th worst in the last 20 years. That has to get better this year. So I like a lot when you're going that late, rounds 12, 13. Yeah. I like to bet on the upside of the talent, the athleticism, and the potential role that seems made for him. Why would you go out and target this guy when you have so many running backs already without a role kind of in mind for him? I don't know. A lot seems to line up for him. Do you think the Gibson call could pan out for me?
I actually really do like the Gibson call. I like the versatility, and you said it best. You're talking about a kid also who you want to put Darius Geis on the field. Sure, put Antonio Gibson in the slot. Let him, let him run a quick slant pattern. Get that kid running out in space. I mean, we've seen what he can do. He's got the quickness. He's got the elusiveness. I think it's better getting him out in space let his speed play as opposed to worrying about him breaking a bunch of tackles, but I mean, he's got the potential of getting into the next level of the defense and really just doing some damage and just carving out some work. I would love to see it. Listen, I'm not sold on Darius Geis. I think you're wrong about Adrian Peterson, though. I believe he's actually 86 years old. But I mean, yeah, I mean, like, what's up with that? I mean, Peyton Barber they brought in. That's like, Peyton Barber, he's like master of the 3 yards per carry average.
Yes.
So, J.D. McKissick, like none of these guys. So I think the table is definitely set, especially with getting rid of Chris Thompson. I think the table is definitely set for Gibson to take that next step forward.
I hope so. Well, we shall see. At wide receiver, you list another. Again, I picked out from your list, and I really liked almost the entire list. Like, we could have gone through the whole thing, but I didn't want to give it all away. But I tried to pick the names that I really gravitated towards. I also love your Anthony Miller call at wide receiver as a sleeper. I think he is significantly undervalued. What is your case for him blowing up this year? I think year 3 now for him. What do you like about Anthony Miller as a sleeper?
Yeah, just look at what happened with him last year. I mean, it was shoulder surgery in the offseason. He spent the first few weeks of the season kind of nursing himself back to health. And then he started, he had a couple of games where it was like, ooh, hey, look, Anthony Miller. Then Taylor Gabriel got a concussion. And then it was like, ooh, look, Anthony Miller. Mm-hmm. And, they're just a good, solid red zone target. He's got good hands. Good route runner. It's him and Allen Robinson now. There really aren't any other targets there. I mean, when we're talking about like Ted Ginn, Jimmy Graham. I mean, they brought in they brought Cole Kmet, but I mean that's not that's not something that's going to impact for me. So I think there's a heavy target share ahead for him. We've seen him produce. We know that he's got a good vertical game too. So seeing him inside the red zone, and then the piece de resistance, it's going to be Nick Foles under center. It's not going to be Mitch Trubisky. And that already, improves all sorts of numbers.
100%. All the narratives last year were when Nick Foles takes over, D.D. Westbrook out of the slot because Nick Foles loves his slot receivers. Well, where's Anthony Miller play the most? The slot. So why aren't those narratives popping up more often that Nick Foles is about to pepper this guy as a slot receiver? And you mentioned once Taylor Gabriel was down, this guy lit it up. He had 2 weeks as wide receiver 1, numbers 23, 26.6. He was actually the wide receiver 8 for a nice solid span. Well, Taylor Gabriel was out in fantasy, so I mean there is definitely, he's proven he could be that anchor, that nice number 2. You're feasting on the second corners as Allen Robinson draws the most. I think it's definitely, especially with the quarterback upgrade, a guy that is going severely under the radar right now, and year 3 breakout potential. We might not have ever seen the best of him quite yet because he's never really truly been fully healthy. So I'm really excited about him. I think there's a ton of intriguing wide receiver sleepers this year. It's probably the deepest position of them all, which is why I kind of like hammering running back early. I'll go running back, and then just stock up on a ton of wide receivers. So some names I love are Golden Tate, Deshaun Jackson, McCole Hardman, especially in that Chiefs offense, Preston Williams. But the guy I want to highlight is Curtis Samuel as a sleeper here, because he's kind of that post-hype sleeper. Everybody wanted him last year. He was all the rage. The offseason MVP, the papers were calling him light years ahead of where he was last year. Impossible to cover. The hype was out of control. And we always have those guys that the hype train just kind of misses the station and doesn't actually land. And that was the case. But did it land because of Samuel or more so because of the quarterback he was dealing with? Kyle Allen, all the statistics say this guy had one of the worst catchable ball rates for Curtis Samuel. And you just have to, as you said, you don't need stats to prove. You put on one Panthers game and you watch the ball just sailing over his head or falling short because Kyle Allen just absolutely blew. There's no stats you need to tell me that. So I think this year, when you get Joe Brady, this new offensive coordinator coming in, and he's all about putting his speed in space, I feel like we haven't seen Curtis Samuel really used properly. He's so dangerous after the catch. He's really in that top 10, 12, just speed in space type of guys, and that's what this offense is going to be predicated upon. So I love DJ Moore. He's my guy, but if I can get the cheaper version of this offense that I think is really going to explode, Teddy Bridgewater can certainly deliver the mail. Maybe not a world beater by any means, but definitely a humongous step above Kyle Allen. So I think we have not yet seen the best of Curtis Samuel. I know Robbie Anderson's there, but to me that's kind of more to lift that lid and let DJ Moore and let Curtis Samuel kind of do that damage, as well as go deep too. I mean, this guy is so explosive downfield. He can also catch the deep ball. So there's a lot to me to love for a guy that's going often undrafted in some mock drafts I've done. I don't know. Will you double down on Curtis Samuel, or are you kind of like burned and I'm done?
No, I kind of dig Samuel as well. I mean, I don't know what we can really expect here. It's going to be very tough to see, what Brady and Matt Rule do with this offense, what we're looking at here as far as Teddy Bridgewater under center. I know, listen, he looked great with the Saints. They didn't miss a beat last year. What I love about Samuel, though, is that, we're going to put him in the slot, let Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore take the outside. The slot is where he definitely thrives. He can definitely go with a quick slant over the middle. He can definitely take it a little deeper than that as well. And like you said, get him running, out in space. Yards after the catch are going to be huge. So I think if they can be creative in this offense and really just, be dynamic, because you've got dynamic receivers. Robbie Anderson can take it downfield and stretch out that defense. DJ Moore has a million different beautiful qualities that you love about a receiver who can get that necessary separation. That alone right there tells me that you're going to free up Samuel, who, I mean, I'm sorry, but you give me a slot corner or a linebacker trying to cover that kind of speed.
Mm-hmm. All day, absolutely. Eat it up. 434 wheels are going to hell yeah, 100%. And your tight end pick is absolutely. If you hadn't picked him, I would have picked him myself.
You can have him. You know what? He's boring at this point. Everybody wants him. Everybody wants him.
But for good reason, Hayden Hurst. Why does everybody, including yourself, want Hayden Hurst this year?
Well, everybody likes Hayden Hurst because, I mean, listen, he's that offense that they run in Atlanta. I mean, all the targets basically that Austin Hooper had, the red zone looks. I think that, it's actually a really good transition to go to Hayden Hurst. He's a little faster than Hooper. He's not as big and bulky, but I think they'll be able to do different things with him. And I'm a huge fan of his. But that's not the one I want to give you. I'm giving you a new one.
Oh, okay.
I got to give you a new one here.
Let's
so that's
hear
like bonus pick here for Hayden Hurst. If you're going mid-tier tight end, get yourself Hunter Henry.
Okay,
don't be afraid of Hunter Henry. Forget about the injury. Don't worry about that. He is good to go. He's 100%. I'll tell you what I love about him. The offense that they're implementing in Los Angeles right now. They fired Ken Wisenhunt last year. And what Anthony Lynn and what's his name? Steicher. I don't even know the proper pronunciation. Steichner, whatever. The offensive coordinator over there. But I was looking at some interviews with these guys and, and reading some stuff. And what they want to do is they want to copycat offense with the Ravens. They're going to do more pistol formation. They're going to, a lot more zone options, a lot more RPO work that they're going to do. They want to tailor this for Tyrod Taylor and eventually Justin Herbert. So you're looking at the way that they're setting things up over there, and then look at the receiving targets. You've got Keenan Allen and you've got Mike Williams. All right, so similar to Baltimore as well. You had what, Marquise Hollywood Brown, and then where were you going with the other wide receiver over there? Was it Willie Snead? Who was it? Right. I think that if they're actually gonna copycat this offense, that to me Hunter Henry is a guy who I think is most likely to be that next Mark Andrews.
Very intriguing if he does become that Andrews style role. I mean, obviously with the breakout tight end of last year. So Hunter Henry, I saw a stat too today. It's something about how he leads since 2016. all tight ends in terms of passer rating from this quarterback whenever he's targeted. So the talent is certainly there. We just need to see him stay healthy because, man, I do love him. He's such a touchdown monster, that big body. He uses it well. So that would be really intriguing. I mean, I love the Hayden Hurst call as well. We saw Dirk Cutter. He loves to use those tight ends over in Atlanta. Austin Hooper was the tight end one above Kelsey, above Kittle, until he got hurt in Week 10. He was the number one scoring guy. That's how good he was. And as you said, this is a more athletic guy. And Hayden Hurst doesn't mean he'll necessarily reciprocate those numbers, but I don't know. I love that. I think a lot of people, it's so unsexy. Nobody wants this guy. You're never going to get the oohs and the ahs if you draft Jack Doyle. But I mean, with Eric Ebron gone, this Frank Reich scheme has loved ever since working with Antonio Gates, Zach Ertz, who just last year, I mean, he peppers them at the third, fifth, fourth, and second most percentage Frank Reich's offenses have peppered the tight end. And now you remove the biggest thorn, especially in terms of the red zone, with Eric Ebron. Yeah, they bring in Trey Burton, but who gives a shit? It's Trey Burton. Like, whatever. Yeah, get out of here with that. Like, that means nothing to me. Jack Doyle is going to inherit a big share of targets. I get Michael Pittman's now there, so that's a little bit more competition along with T.Y. Hilton, but I just think this offense is built around peppering the tight end, especially in the red zone. And Doyle, is unsexy as it is, Austin Hooper wasn't sexy last year, and as we said, was the number one tight end till he went down. So I don't know. Big fan of Jack Doyle and the upside. I just like, and you mentioned Jonnu Smith earlier. There's just a lot of tight ends this year, whereas that seems to never be the case. So this might be that 1 year where you can actually wait on the position and still find some real value. Do you agree with Doyle, or are you kind of like,
I do.
unsexy?
Well, you hit the nail right on the head when you're talking about the fact that there's more depth at the tight end position now than there has been in the past. I mean, Jack Doyle in tonight's best ball 10-teamer went in the 15th round, going around guys like Dallas Goedert, Mike Gesicki, Jared Cook. I mean, these are
all
all
those guys
like,
great.
right? So
Jared
you've got your top five, okay? Your Kelsey, your Kittle, Andrews, Ertz, Waller. That's fine. Then that next level, you've got Henry and Evan Engram. People are going after Gronk, Hayden Hurst. People think TJ Hawkinson's going to be somebody. I don't necessarily know about that, but there's plenty of depth so that, Austin Hooper, he's falling late. So I definitely think that there's enough tight end to go around that, a lot of people are, oohing and on over the top five, but I'm like, you know what? Screw it, man. Give me mid-tier. Let me take Hunter Henry there. Let me take Hayden Hurst there. And, if I want to go later on that, then Jack Doyle, Jonnu Smith. There's nothing wrong with these guys. How about Irv Smith from Minnesota? Yeah. Like, all of a sudden, they're going to start using Kyle Rudolph as more of a blocking tight end, hopefully, and free up Irv. Free Irv Smith. Come on.
Free him. Love Irv Smith, too. What an athletic freak. Absolutely. I mean, the position is completely loaded. Noah Fant, Eric, we could just keep going, and that's just not something you can usually do at tight end. So I love it. I love all the sleepers we have. And again, make sure you check out the Fantasy Alarm Draft Guide for more of Howard's sleepers. We'll be releasing our own investing sleepers. We call them our penny stocks over at the Roto Street Journal later on around early August. But be sure to check out the Fantasy Alarm Draft Guide to get the full list of Howard's sleepers. To wrap things up, we are going to run you through the no huddle offense, where we give you the quick hit. If you want to give us some analysis, you're welcome to. But really, just quick hit. Who comes to mind when I ask you the question? You good for it?
I'm good for it. I talk plenty, so I can shut up and just give you names.
Alrighty, let's fly through then. After Christian McCaffrey, the number 2 player in fantasy should be
Saquon Barkley.
I gotta change this question. Everybody says that one. No more fun. After McCaffrey and Saquon Barkley, the number 3 pick should be
Ezekiel Elliott.
Yeah, exactly. The top 3 is pretty locked in. I'll find something more provocative than that one. But this one might get you. The next Dalvin Cook or round 2 running back who's going top 5 in 2021 will be
Josh Jacobs.
Ooh, I like it. What is the next Chris Godwin or round 4 to 5 wide receiver who explodes into the elite?
Calvin Ridley.
Ooh, 2020's Mark Andrews or breakout tight end?
Hunter Henry!
We just talked about it. Most hated NFL player, but it's for fantasy-specific reasons.
AJ Green.
If there was somehow another Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes, it would be
Kyler Murray.
which early rounder, first or second, is going to bust the hardest?
Miles Sanders.
Who gained the most fantasy value in this 2020 offseason?
Ooh, it's a tie between Kenyon Drake and Joe Mixon.
Conversely, who do you think lost the most value?
Le'Veon Bell.
I won't leave rounds 5 to 6 without drafting.
Marvin Jones, baby.
I love that call. Not enough people talking about Marvin Jones. That's fantastic. Have you ever played the board game Settlers of Catan?
No.
Nobody has said yes yet. I'm gonna get somebody one of these days. The next, you gotta play it. Great game, great game. The next sophomore wide receiver after or even before AJ Brown should be
DK Metcalf.
target hogs or workhorse backs.
Workhorse backs every time.
Yes, absolutely. Alvin Kamara, James Conner, Austin Eckler, all were top 5 running backs that went after round 7. In 2020, that'll be.
That's a tough one. That's a tough one because after round 7, the slim pickings there. I'll throw A.J. Dillon out.
Ooh. What are your ideal league settings?
12-team PPR. Give me a quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, 1 flex. I don't mind the kicker and the defense there, but if you're going to get rid of one, get rid of kickers and throw an extra flex in there.
After Michael Thomas and Devontae Adams, owners should draft blank at wide receiver.
DeAndre Hopkins, baby, come on.
The most important coaching move this offseason was blank for whose value?
I'm going to say Kevin Stefanski / Alex Van Pelt for Baker Mayfield / OBJ's value.
Do running backs matter?
Very, very much so.
And what is the funniest last place punishment or side bet that you've either witnessed or had to be a part of?
Oh, come on. Last year's fantasy football pie bet from Fantasy Alarm. That was amazing, man. Not only did we raise $5,000 for charity, but I mean, to sit there and watch people posting videos of their kids pieing him in the face, husbands and wives dual pieing. We started a crazy run there. And I mean, that was amazing. You can probably still see it all at ffpiebet.com.
Oh, there's even a website dedicated to it.
We did. It was amazing. How did you not get involved in that last year?
I got it this year. Are you guys going to bring it back for this year?
I'm still looking for the next big gag, but we might have to. A lot of people like the pie bet.
I love the pie bet. Absolutely. I remember hearing about that. I got to get involved next time. Absolutely. And we'll wrap up here with the boldest 2020 fantasy prediction you got, and then just remind our listeners where they can connect you and find your work.
All right. Boldest, give me Jordan Howard, 1,200 yards and 10 touchdowns this year.
Ooh, nice.
I mean, that's a little on the super spicy side, but you said you wanted bold, so I'll give you something so bold that you want to baste ribs in it. So there you go.
I'll get the rack out. Absolutely.
And everybody can find me all over fantasyalarm.com. You can follow me on Twitter at RotoBuzzGuy. You can find my work in the New York Post. You can find me all over the live streaming universe there if you just go to Fantasy Alarm's YouTube page. So all that and maybe more. I don't even know anymore. I'm here.
He's all
I'm
over
accessible.
the place.
You can find
me. Absolutely. Well, Howard, this was an absolute pleasure. I'm real glad our listeners, our common fans, were able to bring us together. It was so good to connect with you and speak. Thanks so much for your time tonight.
Thanks so much for having me. Yeah, another shout out to Scotty Brooks for bringing us together, man. Absolute pleasure, man. Looking forward to talking more football with you this season.
Absolutely. Have a great rest of your night, man. Thanks again.
You as well.